I'm going to try and give you some ideas now how you could use arrays in your Greenfoot environment to try to show me your knowledge that you can use them. So I've got a new actor that I've come up with here that's going to help us illustrate one way you could do some cool stuff with arrays. Now, I, basically I'm going to be adding a new class, a mine, that when it explodes will take out all of the things in my program that can die, and I want to animate the explosion with some different frames. So first thing I'll do is I'll go into the editor, and the way I'm going to manage the explosion is through an array. So I'm going to make a string array that stores all the images, and it's basically just going to be the path to finding my images. Now, one thing that I did when I was digging them up was I named them, it's convenient the way it started here with explosion 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because then I can write a loop in my constructor. So I'll just pause for a second here and show you what I mean. So now what I'm going to do is, I know that my pictures here, there's 8 images to run the explosion. So I'm going to create this array. So images is a new string array, and I need 8 slots for it. Then what I'm going to do is run through with a loop, and I'll use the length property to know how far to go. So images at index n is going to be equal to explosion plus n plus the .gif prefix, I guess postfix in this case, or suffix, one of them. Anyways, that will loop through each of the explosions that I have as images and put them all in the array, so it's easy for me. If I had 100 of them, this one loop would do it, so at least that way I wouldn't have to do all the typing. And, the alternative would be for me to go like this each time and say, that is explosion 0. So that's one reason why you want to give it a convenient name, because otherwise I'd be doing this for every image that I had to go through. So even with copy and paste, this would be a pretty tedious process. So I'm going to use a loop to initialize that set of explosions. And I'm also going to want to keep track of where I am in my animation. So to do that, I'm going to have a frame counter is what I'm going to call it. And when I start, the frame counter is going to be at 0 because I haven't actually started this explosion. And now, as I've said to you guys a lot of times in class, good design doesn't just happen. It takes a while to come up with good design. So I've put some thought into this quite a bit and done some sketching to know how this is going to work. And I know that one of the things I'm going to want is something to tell me if I should trigger this animation. So I'm going to add another variable here called triggered. Lets me know if the bomb has been triggered. And when the bomb is first born, triggered is false because it hasn't exploded yet. It could explode the first time the first time act is called in the world, but anyway, initially it's not exploded. So now what I'm going to do is, in my act method, what I'm going to do is see if anybody bumped into the bomb. So in that case, it doesn't really matter who it is. I just need to know that some actor bumped into it. So actor A equals get, I only need one, so one intersecting object, and it can be anybody that triggers this bomb. Then what I'm going to do is see if A is not null, then I know the bomb was triggered. So down here I'll say triggered equals true. And when this is acting, I'll say if the bomb has been triggered, then I want it to explode. And unfortunately there's no generic method in Greenfoot to do that for you, so you're going to have to come up with your own, but it's not too bad to create. And this is where I'll define the code that will explain to Java what it should do when it explodes. So the first thing that I'm going to do is set the image of the bomb. And what I want to set it to is wherever I'm at in the current frame. So if you even picture like a movie reel, like an old, not a digital one, but like an old movie reel, it's kind of like an array. Each frame is side by side, and in the memory of this movie reel, it's actually the reel. So it's actually a perfect example for what an array would look like. So that's what I'm trying to replicate here, is set the image to wherever the frame counter is right now. And of course we initialized it to 0. But that might not always be the case, because explode will be called many times while this is happening. So set the image to wherever the frame counter is, and then set the frame counter to be one more. So go to the next frame in the animation. So that's going to make my image change, but I still need to see, as I said, if anybody was hit, I need to take them out of the game too. So I'm going to need a list for this, so we'll have to go and import it. And the type of list that I'm going to use is, I'm only interested in things that can be killed. So I want a list of killable, and I'm going to call it hit list equals, and if we think about the way the bomb explodes, it would make sense to use get, I believe it's called neighbors in range. Let me just have a peek here. Get objects in range. So that's the one I'm going to use from the radius of the center of the object. And so get objects in range, and I'm going to probably picture my mine as the width of it being sort of an appropriate distance. It has to be an integer, I can't give it a decimal, so I'm going to say get the image and get its width. I couldn't do something like, fudge it out like 60% bigger, because that could give me a decimal, so Java won't let me do that. My only alternative is to make it say double the size, but you could play with this of course later. So basically anybody who's within the range of that width is going to be taken out, and I only want the killable objects to be taken out. So this gives me a list of actors to process, and what I'm going to do is go through this list now. And the list interface has a size method. That's the one that you're going to end up using. So that'll tell you how many actors to traverse through. And even if there's no actors, this loop would not be executed. But basically what I want to do is to each killable item, which is in the hit list at position n right now, so every time the loop is executed, I want that thing to die. So this loop is going to be take out any actors that are hit by the explosion. Now, of course, one problem is going to be, once this runs to the end of its animation, it could go out of bounds and go past the end of the array. So that's what I'm going to make sure down here doesn't happen, is if frame counter is greater than or equal to the amount of images that I have, then basically we're done. The bomb is gone. We should just take it right out of the world. And I'll just highlight this again. It can't just be strictly greater, because arrays are 0 based. If the frame goes to the end, which it would be 1 less than the length, this would actually end up running an error in my program. I would get an index out of bounds error. So stop it when it hits the length, but we'll use greater than or equal just to make sure. So at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the world. And I have multiple levels now in this game, so as long as I'm calling the world, it doesn't matter which one it comes from, just get the world for me. And then I'm going to say w.remove the object, which is this mine. Okay, so just let me have a second to look this over. Yeah, that looks fine, so we'll give it a test run here so you can kind of see what happens. Oh, didn't look fine. Let's see here. Images should be plural. Okay, so now I can put a mine in the game and you can see what its behavior will look like. So unfortunately that fish is going to be toast when this game starts. Boom. And remember, when the fish dies, the way I've programmed it to die is that it's just reborn somewhere else in the game. Unfortunately not the case for the player, but certainly for the fish. Now, one thing I don't particularly like about the mine, and I've done it on purpose to show you how you can control this animation a bit better, is when I run it, watch how fast it disappears. I'd like it to be a little bit more prolonged, and because the explosion is going to be prolonged, I also want it to keep killing whatever runs into it during that time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a delay in here. So private final int delay, and I'm going to make the delay 5 frames. I've played around with it a little bit before I recorded, and it looks pretty decent at 5. So here's the math that's going to do this for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a decision down here. So if the frame counter mod the delay rate is 0, then I will let you update the image, but not every time. So for example, because mine's 5, the first time it'll be triggered because 0 mod 5 is 0, but then it won't be triggered for frame count 1, frame count 2, 3, 4, not until I hit 5. Then the next time it would be triggered would be at 10, 15, 20. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm saying only do this every 5 acts. Or in our case, we're using the variable delay to tell it that. Now a few things need to change though, because the frame counter is going higher than I expect it. So really what I need to do is scale it back by that delay, and I do that by dividing it. And since I know it's has no remainder, this is a whole number, this division. And I need to do the same thing here. I need to make sure that this divided by the delay is not greater than or equal to the lengths. That's the actual index that I'm working on. So now when I compile it, oops. I can choose how fast that mine's going to take to explode. And remember, it's going to continue to kill things until the explosion's finished. So this is actually taking 5 times as long, which means 5 times as many fish might get hit. So that was a lot slower. Maybe I can exaggerate it a bit just for you to see. So I'll make the delay like 25 instead of 5. And that's a little bit ridiculous, but you can see how slow that control is there. But at least I'm the one in control of the speed of that animation and what I believe would be suitable for a bomb. So I think 5 was pretty good. I think I will leave it there. But again, this is another way of adding an array to Greenfoot. It gives you more control over your animation. I've also been able to use a loop in here and a few other programming skills that you're able to demonstrate now to me. So I'll post a few more things about how you can incorporate arrays, but certainly if you find animated GIFs, that's a great way to do it because you can increase the quality of your animations.